Welcome. Wouldn't you know it? I give a series of talks or even a talk on a particular topic, and inevitably I end up learning something. One of the great benefits of teaching is I pretty much get to teach what I most need to hear from myself. So if I give a talk on depression, something will depress me that week. If I give a talk on anger, something will really tick me off. If I give a talk on forgiveness, there'll be something I realize that I need to forgive. I've been giving a series of talks on working with pain, and I was feeling pretty good about how good I was feeling, and wouldn't you know it, boom, I have the opportunity to explore a whole healing journey. Um, I'll tell you the story of what happened to me this last week and some of the practices that I've used to kind of work with the discomfort and the pain that I have felt. And I thought it might be interesting as I flow through this to offer a series of experiences, a series of meditations where you might try on some of these techniques if you're working with any pain or discomfort to apply it directly, or even to kind of revisit some pain or discomfort that you have experienced before. I really hope this might be a benefit to you or anyone you know who might be going through some pain or some discomfort. This will be pretty experiential. And in essence, what I'm talking about is this. Last Sunday morning, it was really, really cold. It was about, I think, 32 degrees. And Tara and I were beginning a week-long home retreat. And I thought, part of being on retreat is following what feels good. And I thought I'm going to go out for a ride on my mountain bike and do some photography down by the river. The bluebells are peaking and all that good stuff. So I went down. It was really cold and I was underdressed. And I thought, well, normally I go back this kind of long way around, but I was really cold. So I thought, let me take this shortcut up this trail through the woods. And basically what happened was, as I was pedaling up a pretty rough area with a lot of tree roots, my pedal snagged one of the tree roots. And the whole bike just stopped and I went flying. In basically what happened was I fractured my fifth metatarsal bone on my right foot. Kind of rolled the foot, and it wasn't pretty. So boom, I had an opportunity to deal with something I wasn't anticipating at all. So this last retreat was me basically getting very familiar with the ceiling in my room when my eyes weren't closed. So what I'd like to talk about is kind of the adjustments we all go through to the unexpected, and how to work with discomfort. So basically kind of breaking it down into four parts. What it's like when you get bad news or when you're experiencing some unexpected pain or discomfort. First of all, dealing with the shock and then the awe and then ultimately the adjustment. And then really moving to explore what it means to have tea with your demons. Everything that comes up in that first reaction to the experience of pain and discomfort. And then some techniques, kind of like my favorite techniques for working with healing and some healing strategies. And then what it's like to kind of get into the habit of looking for the good, really exploring how you can shift your attitude to one that might cultivate a greater sense of healing. It's a very alive process for me. So there's a great saying, I think it was Darwin, who said, it's not the strongest or the smartest that survive. It's the ones who are the quickest to adjust to change. So after my fall and after I managed to get back home and kind of put my foot up and ice it, I got online and immediately started searching for the quickest way to heal a bone fracture. Because I heard something pop, and I was pretty sure it was either broken or fractured. And I emailed my friend Craig, who is my reality checker and also my biking guru, and I said, 8 weeks, probably, and I'm researching how can I heal this the quickest I can. And pardon his French, but his response was 8 weeks. Oh man! But if I may say, don't be a dick. Listen to the expert. Take time to heal, or you're going to regret it later. And indeed, I have done a number of times this exact thing. I kind of assumed I was healed, and I went out and re-injured myself. So since then, I'm kind of settling into the reality of things. This is not going to heal overnight. I actually did get it checked out. It is a fracture of the fifth metatarsal, and the doctor said 8 weeks, wearing a boot. And it's too painful to put weight on now, but eventually I'll have a walking boot. So what does this mean? Well, pain and suffering are inevitable. Unless you know something I don't know, chances are you have not gone beyond pain. You have not gone beyond old age. You have not gone beyond death. This is a reality-based practice, this practice of mindfulness. There's that recognition when we realize these are the cards that I've been dealt. No matter what your experience may be with pain or discomfort, oh, this is my genetics. This is my constitution. This is what I have to deal with. Of course, what this brings us in contact with is the second arrow, the teaching of the second arrow. First, you experience pain. The question is, can you just keep it to that? Or do you add on the mental agitation, which is like being struck by a second and third and fourth and fifth arrow? I'm pretty on to that teaching, and I'm pretty on to myself, but I still couldn't help adding a little extra dig. How dumb. Like, why did I try to take the shortcut back, through the trail? I know how dangerous that is with the tree roots. I shouldn't have had the tires inflated so hard. My technique was off. How dumb. I wasn't paying attention. I'm not going to be able to paddle for a really long time. I'm not going to be able to hike. It's my favorite time of year. Blah, blah, blah. Just the mind churning on beating myself up. And it's so interesting to really pause and just look at the mind. This is what the mind does. The mind automatically focuses on what's wrong. And I also noticed pretty quickly, not that I wanted to see it, due to my own personal conditioning around pain and discomfort, I revert to a very primitive strategy, which is not particularly unique. But my particular strategy is to get as self-contained as I can. I just unconsciously hunker down into survival mode, and I never ask for help. So to put it mildly, this did not play very well with my wife, who felt that I was shutting her out. And that is actually kind of being punishing with my silence. And what always gets me and motivates me to change is when I really get how my behaviors impact other people. And as much as I hate feeling helpless, and as much as I hate needing help, I really don't like creating pain for other people. And so I became very aware of this very young part of me that decided it was better not to be dependent on others, and I got pretty good at being self-contained. But what this whole experience revealed was another growth opportunity. And I got to see for myself, once again, how pain and stress and anxiety close me down, and how I shut down, and how when I open up into relationship, there are new possibilities. And so there was actually a very beautiful flowering of me asking for help, asking for what I need. And fortunately, in this case, having someone who was really eager to be there and help. So the question for us all to explore is, When you experience pain and discomfort, what are your patterns of reaction? Now, we're all entitled to our first reaction, but when you're under duress, do you shut down? Do you kind of disassociate from the experience as best you can? Do you get aggressive? Do you get judgmental? And these are kind of the classic patterns we all unconsciously move into. Either we just lock it down, or we completely disassociate from the experience, or we find ourselves moving into anger, judgment, and blame. And this is, again, one of the beautiful, horrible, awful teachings of being in pain and feeling that sense of helplessness. You get to see your patterns and your conditioning, and it's possible sometimes to meet it with awareness and also meet it with compassion. I'm really big into the power of questions. Whatever you ask, the mind will explore. As the Tony Robbins says, people tend to ask themselves, why did this happen to me? You ask yourself that question, your mind's going to come up with answers. And so, of course, I went through that myself. Why did this happen? Why was I so stupid? Well, my mind is very quick to come up with answers to that one. Or how awful is this going to be to not be able to move in one of my favorite times of year? I'm a pretty active person, to take that away. Or the question could be, how can this be an opportunity for waking up? How can this serve the awakening of heart and mind? How can I grow from this? What a different question. And ultimately, as I moved through my first reaction and all the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth arrows, that question became, how can this be an opportunity for waking up? Now, I mentioned just briefly those three ways we tend to react to life when it isn't going well, either to kind of shut down, kind of close off, or disassociate, or get into anger, judgment, and blame. And I'm also pretty good at the disassociation. I come from that school of thought, hey, I grew up on a farm and Germanic heritage, so if you're in pain, just pretend it isn't there and it'll maybe go away. Not a great strategy, really. And so the question became, can I take this on as a mindfulness practice? Can I really be aware of what's happening, how I'm holding it? And so, of course, inevitably, that led me to a contemplation of the acronym of RAIN. R, to recognize or realize what's happening. A, to ask if I can allow it or accept it. I, to investigate, look closer if that feels appropriate. And N, to nurture what you find, to bring some kind of loving presence, some kind of compassion, empathy, kindness toward that. And so, this is it. These are the cards I've been dealt. Can I make room for it? Yeah, I don't have much choice. So then the question became investigation. Let me look a little bit closer. So I thought, well, let me look at the science here. It's really interesting, to me anyway. When a bone is broken, there are these stages that the body goes through. The day 1 through 5 is the inflammatory stage. That's the formation of hematoma, the inflammation, the swelling. Basically, it's a lot of pain as this early warning system saying, stop using this part of the body. The blood clot forms around the broken bone. There's lots of swelling and bruising, and I'm just kind of moving out of that phase right now. And then what happens next from day 5 to roughly day 11, according to the internet, this is the beginning of the repertory stage, the fibrocartilage callus formation. The callus replaces the blood clot. There's this little lattice that happens that kind of holds it all together, but it's not strong enough for the body to be used. So that's like 2 to 6 weeks of this lattice work of callus that starts to hold it together. And then roughly day 11 to day 28 is the bony callus formation. And this is like the remodeling stage of a broken bone. This is where the regular bone comes in and replaces the callus, and it's reshaped to look the way that it did before. It's amazing how the body knows how to knit the bone back together. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of the magic of that. And I must say, I did look at how I could optimize the healing process. But this time, it was not so much from like, how can I make this go away, to what is the science of healing here? Like, how can I respond to this with mindfulness and with care? And so when you break down a bone, one model says that 30% of it's all physical. You want to immobilize the bone, you need a lot of sleep for the restorative process to happen. Nutrition, you need a lot of the micronutrients, you need protein, all of that. Also, awareness, like the thing that really impedes bones healing is smoking and alcohol. So no smoking, no alcohol. But this model also says that 70% of healing is your attitude. And there have been studies on this, that people who heal faster have the following characteristics. They take responsibility for their recovery process. They have a high determination and desire to heal. They had more social input, like more social connection around their healing process. They maintain a positive attitude. They frequently used imagery and visualization techniques. And they expected a full and successful return to activity. Now that's kind of a cool process. Taking responsibility, staying determined, having desire, being connected socially, and bringing a lot of healing attention through imagery, visualization, and expecting full recovery. So there's a really cool thing here. And then I'd like to lead a 3-stage meditation, if you will. And this is the whole principle of what's called Kintsugi. You may be familiar with this. It was a philosophy as well as an art form in late 16th, early 17th century Japan. And what they would do is they would take broken pottery, and then with a kind of a tree sap with gold, they would glue it back together. Now, the idea here was that they were taking the broken pottery and not trying to hide the breaks, but actually highlighting the breaks and sort of and celebrating the form of the whole coming back together again. Now, it's relatively simple to extrapolate from there. Rather than hiding our breaks and our imperfections, can we celebrate them and make them art? And the interesting thing is with Kintsugi is the breaks are actually very, very strong. In that same way, quite often when bones are broken, they heal stronger than the original bone. And on a psychic level, there's the possibility that our psychic wounds, our emotional wounds, have the possibility of making us stronger and wiser and more compassionate than before. So this is not about hiding our wounds, but actively bringing them into the light of awareness. So how does healing happen? Well, one way to think of it is, first is relaxation. When your muscles are relaxed, they hold less tension. And when there's less tension, there's more flow. So there's more of a sense of just sort of general systemic ease, But the more relaxed you are, the more whatever you believe that energy is, prana, chi, ki, Holy Spirit, that energy is free to flow. The second stage, this is just my way of thinking of it, by the way, is that it's about coming into intimate contact, like really coming into contact with what's there. Not turning away from it, but actually like zooming in as close as you can. And the third is about exploring kind of wholeness, what it means to think of something whole and healed. This can be seen as bringing in empathy, compassion. It can also be where we sort of explore some visualization. So one of the meditations that I would do on my foot was to consciously relax, do a whole relaxation through the body, relax into the foot as much as I can. In the second stage of coming into intimate contact, I did a practice which I had mentioned before called kind of connecting the dots. And by this I mean when you bring your attention really intimately into some place of unpleasant, you'll notice that that primary energy of sensation is going to show up as either unpleasant, pleasant, or in between, neutral. And so if you have the concentration and the relaxation, you bring your attention to the unpleasant. And you try to locate just how intimately you can sense it. And what's fascinating quite often when I do this is I realize that I can't actually find a fixed point of unpleasant sensation. It's almost like I begin to kind of sense the movement of the atoms. And really when I'm using that form of concentration, I'm flooding that part of the body with my attention, which opens up a very interesting thing, which is the whole idea of where the attention goes, the energy flows. Or in strict yogic terms, prana follows chitta. Energy follows attention. So something very powerful happens there just by flooding that area. The third is where we kind of bring some empathy in here. And here I've been playing with some visualization. I'm just sort of imagining the broken bone kind of like magnetically coming back together. A sense of it like just sort of being glued back together. Some people like to explore like just bathing that area with like warm, healing colors. It's a place to get really, really creative. So I thought we might do a little exploration of this meditation. And I'll be relatively brief because time is flying by. And here I'd recommend if you have a place inside where you feel some pain or some discomfort, you might explore what it's like to kind of be with this. And if you're feeling good, wow, celebrate that. But you might just recall a time when you felt pain or discomfort and just explore this following meditation and just sense what it feels like to number one, explore relaxation, coming into intimate contact, and then bringing some form of empathy, compassion, kindness, creative visualization to it. Now, I am aware of time. I'm aware that time is sort of flying by. So I'd like to go through this in a way that's will give you time to really experience it. But I have a lot more to say, so we won't go on that long. Probably about 7 to 10 minutes. I'm going to set my timer so I can keep myself on track. So you might like to close your eyes. You might take 3 slow, deep breaths. And take a few moments now to allow yourself to relax and soften inside. And again, I normally find it really helpful for myself to explore with specific areas. The inside of the mouth, relaxing your tongue, the lips, Softening the muscles of your face. Softening the palms, the fingers and thumbs. Softening the belly. And you might explore in the next 3 exhalations, how much more could you relax and feel in your belly? And feeling now the soles of the feet and the heels. And just sensing now, is there anything inside that could relax or soften or let go? If there's a particular place inside where you feel pain or discomfort, just let your attention begin to move in that direction. And if you're exploring some form of emotional pain or even mental agitation, you might just sense, can you locate kind of the corresponding feeling inside with that emotion or with that mental experience of agitation? And you might just sense if you can feel its shape, its size, and its location. And can you relax around it? Relax the areas that are adjacent to it. And where is relaxation possible in proximity to this location? And only if it feels right for you, let your attention move into the area where you're feeling a strong sensation. And if you can sense from the inside out this distinction between the unpleasant sensations and the pleasant sensations and the neutral sensations. And as if you had a microscope or a magnifying glass, can you locate the smallest units of unpleasant sensation? If you're finding this challenging or too much, then you can just sort of back off to more of a generalized holding of this space. But if you can, just say over the next minute or so, again, how intimately can you locate? What's the smallest unit of unpleasant sensation you can discover? Where the attention goes, the energy flows. And you might sense or explore now, is it possible to, along with your attention flowing into this part, can you include with it some kind of loving presence, some empathy, compassion, kindness? And for these next few minutes, imagine that you could get creative in how you offer this sense of compassion, kindness, imagining the most healing colors that come to mind. Imagine it sort of flooding into this area. And can you imagine the healing process happening? For me, it was a broken bone kind of magnetically coming back together. Can you imagine inside the healing process happening now? If you lose focus, again, just offering kindness, compassion, or simply a warm, healing color flowing into this area. And we'll continue for the next minute. You might now just let go of all technique. Just relax. Relax any sense of doing and just sense, what do you feel inside right now? What has shifted? If you like, you can open your eyes or remain with your eyes closed. And as you kind of sense what may have shifted, one thing, very important thing to point out here is it may not feel better. For many years, I was passionate about developing my hands-on healing skills. I poured a lot of time and attention into getting certified in a number of techniques, among them Traeger work, structural acupressure, lots of training in craniosacral and deep tissue work. And one thing I've noticed when I practice on myself, and certainly when I practice on others, is that when you come in contact with that raw experience of sensation and you just hold the space around it, quite often it will feel worse. And my interpretation of that is that what actually happens is the energy starts flowing. And quite often there's a lot of sensation when the energy flows. My belief is that primal life force or energy is intelligent and it's evolutionary. It's designed to come into a greater sense of wholeness. So when you create space for it, when you sense its location, when you kind of sense exactly what it feels like, when you can differentiate between pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, when you juice it with some empathy, compassion, kindness, and give it permission to move, it will move. And quite often, because it's designed to feel more whole, it moves to where it's not flowing. It's going to move to where it's blocked. Whether or not that's true, it's empirically ratified in my own experience. That's what I believe. So as I've been sending energy to the broken bone in my foot, quite often I'll feel a lot of throbbing, a lot of strong sensation, and I have to keep reminding myself that this is most probably a healing response. And this brings up a very interesting thing. I'm aware of time. Just have 10 minutes. You may have heard of Reiki. Reiki is referred to as a universal life force. This comes from Japan, and it's very interesting. In any tradition, you will find the Orthodox and the Reformed Church that form out of it. And with the tradition of Reiki, there are those who are very orthodox. This is the way it's taught. It's a transmission, never vary from the formality of the teaching. To those who felt this needs to be taught to everyone, we need to adapt it and get it out to as many people as we can. So a huge kind of schism in the community. My mother was a Reiki master. She was really, really into it. So I got trained in Reiki 2. I remember I met someone and we were talking and I said, "Oh, I'm trained in Reiki level 2." And he said, "Oh, I'm Reiki level 3." And I thought, well, la-dee-da. You're better at universal life force than me? So it's just kind of crazy, this whole idea of having level 3 universal life force as opposed to level 2 universal life force. And what it really brings up is like, what does it mean to open to universal life force? Kind of that technique of like consciously relaxation, consciously focusing on pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, consciously sending healing energy. There's a doer in there doing that. It's skillful. It's all good. Totally down for that. But there's something very, very interesting as well around, well, what does it mean to open to universal life energy? Sometimes referred to as kind of the quantum field, or that field of infinite possibility. So what is the quantum field? One teacher / healer says this. He said, the quantum field is an invisible field of energy and information, or you could say a field of intelligence or consciousness that exists beyond time and space. Now, when it comes to healing, this stuff gets really, really interesting, because we have kind of the Newtonian paradigm of determinism, separatism, reductionism, materialism, and then this whole cool thing around the quantum paradigm, which is kind of contextual, it's conscious, it's interconnected. How do you tune in to the quantum field? How do you tune into quantum healing? I got to figure out how to tell you this in like 7 minutes, or there's going to be a part 2. Part of it is how do you move beyond the doer to open into being and receptivity? So here's what one teacher says. Well, first you have to relax. Again, when you relax, you start to allow energy flow. You need to slow down your brain waves. And the brain waves range from making it happen to opening into presence. And to do that, you can use breath or visualization or sense your heartbeat. You're quieting and you're creating a more open state. Now, here's the paradox. You are creating an open state, but you're also using some focus. And this is where there's a discipline that comes from meditation. You're using will and discipline to explore what it's like to both relax and pay attention on purpose. This comes with practice. Whatever fires together, wires together. It's one of the most powerful elements in our meditation practice. But willful practice only takes you so far. So one thing to explore is when you've arrived in presence, how do you make the shift to kind of open and receive? Part of it is around consciously cultivating gratitude, cultivating joy. And this begins to open you into this experience of the quantum field, if you will. In the quantum field, you have to let go of your sense of I and mine. There's no place, there's no where. There's just an openness to receive the pure experience of presence itself. So how do we do this? And for me, I'm asking myself, how do we do this in 5 minutes? Let's do a short little reflection just to kind of sense this, just to sort of taste. What does it mean to open into this quantum field of infinite possibility? So if you like, close your eyes and feel your breath and sense what could relax or soften right now. Over the next 3 exhalations, how much more could you soften, relax, and feel on the inside? Now explore, if you can, what it's like to both feel that sense of relaxation and at the same time use your attention to become even more present. And here you might explore your breath and notice what it's like to deeply relax around the breath, but feel the intimacy, the micro movement of the breath on the inside. And in this sense of presence, you might just turn your attention to the experience of gratitude or joy. Just as a doorway, think of one thing that you are grateful for in your life right now, one thing that sparks joy. And as you breathe, as that comes into mind, can you imagine that sense inside? Can you imagine that feeling growing and expanding? Exploring now the following questions. Could you relax or soften even more inside? Can you imagine just for a moment any sense of I and mine either falling away or dispelling? Can you imagine this sense of this field of infinite possibility, a pure open awareness? And can you imagine if just for a few moments each cell of your body relaxing and being fed and resonating with this field of infinite possibility? And can you imagine if just for a few moments who you are, awake and whole? You might gently deepen your breath. And if just for a few moments, as we close this meditation, imagine yourself fully awake and whole and vibrant and alive. Imagine your journey, your path opening with greater ease and well-being. And imagine this sense of this inner vibrant light radiating out to be a benefit to those who are closest to you in your life. Imagine them feeling this light and feeling the benefit. And imagine that radiating out in all directions to be a benefit to all. If you might deepen your breath. When it comes to healing, to feeling more whole, it's so important to recognize where you are in any given moment. To make room for the first and second and third and fourth arrow of reactivity. And then to ask yourself, how can this serve awakening? How can this wound become like Kintsugi, a source of greater strength? How can this awaken wisdom and compassion? One element of healing is to look closer, to really investigate what's going on, to use the methods of relaxing to let more flow through, of really bringing your attention to the intimacy of what's here, and to call on compassion, on creative visualization and healing. And another element of healing is to explore what it means to truly open to this field of infinite possibility, this quantum field, this timeless presence that holds you. And to explore your willingness to open and receive, to feel more whole, to feel more alive. And to allow your wound to open into greater healing for all. That's what I'm working with. And I'm grateful to be able to share this with you. And whatever wounds that you have been dealt in this life, may they turn into gifts. Thank you so much. So many blessings in your practice.